I'll move us on to our next speaker then. Elt, whenever you're ready.
All right, everybody. My name is Elt, and I'm a data analyst, and I'm here to talk today about how dating solely within the fandom is not the most optimal choice for furries, and you should look elsewhere to include it into your life. First of all, I'd like to make 3 points. Dating outside your social group leads to a diversity of rewarding experiences that helps you grow and build resilience and flexibility as an individual. Additionally, dating solely inside the fandom limits your total dating pool possibilities. And third, furries are awesome and should share their creativity, love, and openness to the world to help combat social stigma and isolation by being exemplary models of, well, what is furry at its best. I'd like to point out to my first piece of evidence here. There was a study done at San Paulo University. I've linked that in the voice chat if anyone would like to check the white paper. It's actually on machine learning, and they found that groupthink, or having a small data set comprised from smaller subsets and not having access to other larger groups of data, restrict learning capabilities for not only computers, but also for people. The concept of the paper talks about the diversity of experiences you get to have in life allow you to grow and be a better person. For example, if you don't know how to snowboard and you might date somebody who normally you're not interested in snowboarding, you may get a chance to experience it. And if you happen to like it, you can integrate that into part of your life and grow as an individual and challenge yourself, which I think makes for better human beings in the late term or long term. Caden spoke on the factor of long distance relationships, and the proximity of someone using the same dating app is a related key to this. Howler is a dating app within the furry fandom that allows you to date other furries, and it has 305 reviews on Google Play Store. Grindr has about 300,000, and Tinder has about 3.1 million reviews. This means that there is 10,000 more people to each furry, and unless you count foxes operating at peak efficiency, there's no way they're 10,000 more times as effective as getting dating opportunities around. So therefore, you're severely restricting who you can possibly date if you're only staying within the fandom. It's very hard to meet people as the average or normal person would. So restricting your total dating possibility pool is a hampering effect that is going to lead to less relationships in the long term, in at least the local vicinity around you. The cool fursuits, art, and cultural impacts that furry community can generate are not only amazing, I think they're going to be a culture milestone when we look back. Furry should be a benchmark in someone who's accomplished a unique feature in life and can talk about what a subculture can bring to the rest of the dating pool and community. So it's something for other people to learn from. By only dating within the fandom, you are restricting what view of people furry have to an external and often hostile view, comparatively to a view that comes from within because you met somebody, either you're dating them or you're just friends and hanging out doing snowboarding or some other activity. And I think it would be very healthy to go and share that experience with other people outside the fandom. Therefore, furry is a healthy thing to experience from a dating perspective if you are someone who's dating a furry. So lastly, I ask everyone to consider trying to date somebody outside of your normal pool of people, because it'll make you a more enriched, more experienced individual and will help grow your resilience and flexibility. That is the end of my speech. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Elt. And we do have some questions for you. Ventus, whenever you're ready.
I'd like to ask why you say that being a furry and dating other furries is severely limiting. Wouldn't it be a point to say that being a furry is a much more tightly knit community?
To answer your question, Ventus, I believe dating people outside of the fandom is healthy. I also believe dating people within the fandom can be healthy. I don't believe it's good to put all your eggs in one basket. And there's certainly some things to learn from other furries even within the fandom. But I think there's even more to learn from other people if you include the just sheer amount of people outside of the fandom.
Thank you. Simba.
Hi, El. Thank you for your speech. So research suggests there are between 5 and 10 million furries in the world. Sure, that's not 7.5 billion, but surely if someone can't find someone who fits their needs decently well out of a few million, that's more of an indication that they're too picky than anything else. You know, our ancestors managed just fine with only a few dozen people in local tribes to choose from.
I'm sorry. Do you mind reiterating your question?
So what I'm saying is one of your points were that because there are so many fewer furries, you're limiting yourself quite a lot. And I'm saying research shows there are 5 to 10 million furries. Why is that too few? Our ancestors managed with only a few dozen in local tribes.
I'm as a data analyst, I try to optimize towards the lowest global minima that you can. In other words, the most optimal solution. If you want the most experience, the most opportunity, opening yourself to all these other experiences is going to provide more resources. Whereas if you restrict yourself to only dating within furry, you are cutting off some active resources you could be using. The one theoretical which I can't disprove is that maybe there's enough furries in your life to never not stop dating a furry to the point where you never really have to if you don't want to. To that, I would refute back to my first point. You can learn a lot of things from not furries.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up, it is Crimson, whenever you're ready.
I was just listening there and I was wondering, I understand, I do agree with the sentiment that you shouldn't look directly in your own fandom if you are intending to find someone to date. However, I have also found, ever since I've looked into the furry community more so in just the last year than I ever have, I've noticed that the community is incredibly varied. Even though everyone shares this one thing in common, I find that many people have it in a variety of depth in their life. Like, I find that you'll find many people who share the furry community but are very, very different. So I feel, do you not, sorry, I'm trying to get my words together here. Do you not feel that there could be enough diversity within the furry community, given that some people can be so different, and given that some people don't actually hold furry as big an aspect of themselves? To some people, it is only a hobby, and to some people, it is incredibly important. And in that in itself, people can be very varied.
Crimson, I'd like to thank you for a wonderful question. That's a very good point to make. I think there is certainly enough people and enough diversity where a very strong community of individuals who all have awesome traits and have things to bring. Everybody, there are unique things about all of us that are fantastic. But there's also an advantage to having people with even more significant levels of diversity. There was a couple of studies done by the study, I don't know the exact name, but I can pull it up later, the Furry Research Group, citing that we have an 80% classification of white males in the fandom comparatively to other groups. So, if you're, let's say, of a different, if you're Indian, for example, that might be much harder to date, or you might have a constrained resource if somebody was looking to date that, that person or that background or that experience. Or if, for example, you're into fishing, there are certain underrepresented classes within furry. If you include political demographics to cultural, there's too many wide categories that are not classified by the general concept of furry. So while we may have a lot of diverse people, and that's fantastic, there's even more diverse people outside of our fandom. So why constrain yourself if you can't help it, or if you can try? Does that answer your question?
It does, yes.
Are there any further questions? If not, I'll let these two continue their back and forth for a little bit. Right, Alpha, then, you were saying a response there. Please feel free to have a response and then another response back from El, and we'll leave it there.
All right, no problem. What I was just going to add on was, though I do fully agree with the response you gave to my question, and it is very important to look for someone with more aspects in common with you or someone who is very different from you. I'm just wondering, do you also believe that though you shouldn't really encourage people to look outside the fandom, you should encourage people to look within the fandom, but also encourage people to look outside the fandom? But do you believe that it could be detrimental if you tell people, well, it could be a bad idea if you look solely within your community? I agree that you shouldn't look solely in your community, but when it comes to dating, I feel it's very much a person by person basis. It's very, very difficult to give kind of blanket encouragements. I feel like it would be very tricky that no matter what encouragements you give, there will always be trouble, depending on the individual.
I agree with you. I think blanket statements are dangerous and usually a really good way to cheat on exams, because when they say it's always this, it's usually not always that. What I really mean by that is there's enough opportunity within the furry fandom that you probably don't need to date outside of it if you want to have a very full and rich, happy life. But when you say do not date outside the furry fandom or do not date the furry fandom, it puts a restriction on your total pool of availability. And the moment you say no to an experience and don't have something to follow it up on, in other words, you have a perfectly good weekend, you have somebody walks in front of you and says, hey, I'm a furry, let's go on a date. The second you say, I don't want to date you, you are a furry, and you do nothing instead, is wasted effort on everyone's part. And I think it's a lack of opportunity. Unless you've already discovered that about yourself in a moment of self-reflection, that, yeah, I'm not into furry. These animals, they scare me. I've had people say that. So really, I do agree with you. I think it's a combination of fire all guns rather than, ew, gross, a furry.
Right, thank